Hi, thanks for joining me today to make cherry Bakewell scones. So today I'm going to use my B-Row cookbook. It's the B-Row flour cookbook and it's the home recipes. So I'm just going to slightly adapt this recipe for rich scones. So as you can see here, it's a rich scone recipe and we're just adapting that just to give the scones a lovely cherry Bakewell flavour. So in my bowl, I've got 7 ounces of self-raising flour. And I'm just going to add to that a pinch of salt. And then I'm adding in just some margarine. It's 2 ounces of margarine, just at room temperature. It doesn't have to be cold the same way as you would make pastry. It just needs to be room temperature, easy to mix in. I've taken off my rings just to make it easier to mix. It saves your rings getting sticky and also is a bit easier just to rub in the flour and the butter mixture. So just rubbing that in just through the tips of your fingers, the same as making pastry. So that just takes a few minutes to rub in. And now I'm just going to add in the almonds. So I've got 1 ounce of ground almonds. And also 1 ounce of sugar. That can be castor sugar or just normal granulated sugar. And then I'm just going to mix in the ingredients. So at this stage, it's like fine breadcrumbs, quite dry, and just mixing everything together just to incorporate all the ingredients. Okay, so I've washed my hands now and I'm just going to add in the liquid. So this is 1 free-range large egg. You can use a medium egg or a large egg, it doesn't matter which. So I'm just going to start by beating that up. Give it a really good mix, just so it mixes in well. And then I'm going to fill up my jug to make up the liquid mixture to 140 millilitres. So just popping in the milk. I'm using semi-skimmed. Again, you can use semi-skimmed or whole milk or a milk alternative. So just mixing that together. You just give it a good stir. And then I'm just going to pour some of that liquid in. And I'm also going to use some almond essence today. So 2 teaspoons of that just goes into the liquid. It's easier to add to the liquid than it is to the dry ingredients because then it incorporates better into your scone mix. So I've just poured that in and then I'm just going to beat that in as well. So then I'm going to add in up to probably about 2/3, just over 2/3. But you do want to leave some liquid in your jug for brushing over the top of the scones at the end. And then I'm just going to start incorporating the liquid into the dry mix with a spoon. It's easier to start it off with a spoon and then you can get your hands in later on. So giving that a rough mix round. So as you can see, it's all fairly easy, just in one bowl. And here's my cherries. So the cherries are going to give it that Bakewell flavour. So these are glaze cherries and it's a small tub that you get from the supermarket. I'm just going to chop these in. I'm chopping these by hand using a knife which isn't very sharp and I'm used to chopping like this. If you want to chop your cherries separately, then go ahead, chop it onto a chopping board and then you can just put them in. So just chopping them down. I quite like them in large pieces so you can see them when you're eating the scone. I don't like them if they're too squashed up into little pieces. So you're looking for Probably quarters is the best way just to put them in. They're quite sticky. You just pop them in. So these cherries just add flavour. They're not adding to the actual the mix in a way that's going to affect it too much. You don't want too many, otherwise it can make the scones quite dense. But it really doesn't matter how many cherries you put in, just to give it some flavour. Okay, now this is the bit where it gets messy again. So if you just get your hands in, start to stir that around, and you're just mixing with your hands, bringing all the ingredients together and making sure that the cherries are distributed as even as you can throughout your mix. So you just keep mixing until you come to a consistency where I've added a wee bit more flour into this. A consistency where it's not too dry and not too moist. So you want a good scone mix. Now it's hard to know if this is your first time making scones. It may take you a few times to get used to that texture that you're looking for, but too dry and your scones are dry, and too wet and your scones won't rise very well. So, but it's a lovely sort of soft moist dough that you're getting here. Now I'm putting some flour on, and I'm not going to bother with a rolling pin. I'm just going to pat it down about 2 inches high to get a nice high scone. You don't want it flattened out too thin, otherwise your scones won't rise very well and they'll just look very flat. So just dusting it so they're not going to stick to the board, and then just using your cutter, dust your cutter with the flour so it doesn't stick, and then just straight down with the cutter and pull it up. Don't twist your cutter, as this stops your scones from rising. So you can see it's got a really good height on it. As you press down, the mixture does push down a little, so you want to start off with it quite high just to start cutting them out. You can just keep reshaping your dough and cutting it out as you go. You can see how high that is, a good height. So I've finished all my scones, and now I'm just going to brush them with the rest of the mixture that's there. So you just brush the tops. Take care not to put any of the liquid down the sides of the scones, because again that can stop them from rising. You just want to carefully brush the tops with the mix. So that's them now all brushed up, and they get put into an oven at 220, quite a hot oven. You want your oven on at the start so it's nice and hot. And they will rise up in about 10 minutes. It's very important to keep your eye on them. They don't take long to cook. So if you just keep your eye on them, then you'll be able to take them out when they're a nice golden brown. So as you see here, these are the finished scones. Now I don't like scones too dark, and I also don't like lots of flour on the scones. So as you can see, with using the parchment paper, they've not stuck to the tray. You don't have to use any flour. I've got some nice jams to go with them. Raspberry really brings out the flavour of the Bakewell scone. So as you see, lovely golden base, and they're very light, but they've still got a nice moistness when you open them, so they're not too dry. So some of the scones, I decided to put some, you see the scones here, this is the finished picture, and these scones have got just a water icing, which is just icing made up with water to a good consistency, and then I've put a chopped cherry, some toasted almonds and some coconut on the other one. So I really hope you give this recipe a go. It's a fantastic flavour, and they're really nice either with butter and jam or with the icing on top. So I hope you enjoy it.